Welcome back to Curiosity, Not Judgment. My name is Birga.
And I'm Gary.
So last episode, we began the conversation around how do you interact with someone who's experienced trauma? What are some good questions that you could ask? And we also talked about what are some commitments that you can make, that we can make as listeners in a conversation with someone who has experienced that trauma. And there were 6 kind of statements of commitment that you could make to make someone feel safe to share their story with you. I'll read them again just as a refresher. We covered the first 4, but I think we wanted to give a little bit more time to the last 2. So here they are. This is called the Safe Listener's Promise from the Trauma Healing Institute. And to your point from last time, we say promise. This isn't necessarily, place your hand on the Bible and swear, but this is our best intention in how to listen well. I will listen to understand. I will keep what you share private. I will not minimize your pain. I will not compare your pain with my own. I will not give quick solutions, and I will listen again when you want to share more.
So good. And the title of the 3 questions, by the way, that start this is what to ask somebody who's hurting. Mm-hmm. So I want to emphasize again, and we made this point last week also, that this is not big T trauma necessarily. This is somebody who's hurting, and one person's trauma is not another's. In other words, the level of trauma. Some people are affected more or less in the same event than somebody else. So part of this is trying to help someone understand, or the listener to understand, how impactful is this to the person.
Yeah.
Is this oh my goodness, there's days or weeks or months of processing here, mm-hmm. or is it or is it something that we can have this conversation and it's done?
Yeah.
Right? And so there needs to be a little bit of a sense of that. Not that you have the responsibility as a listener to determine that exactly, but just be sensitive to the fact that the same thing might have happened. This person's, something happened to their cat. And you might be one of those people that are just like, well,
big deal.
It's a cat.
Yeah.
And the other person, this might be their life.
Yeah.
I mean, this might be the thing that they cling to when things are super bad, and helps them get through other traumas. Mm-hmm. And so it's really important to understand that different people react differently. But back to these questions, mm-hmm. they're just so good and so rich, and something to think about, especially if you're trying to practice being curious and not judgmental.
Right.
So asking these questions, and then as Birga so well says, don't judge the responses. Mm. And sometimes you can ask follow-ons, but it gives the person an opportunity to help self-process.
Yes.
Which is kind of the goal, right? It's not that you're there to give them advice or to tell them, well, just get over that. Mm. And it's not there that you are the healer.
Right.
The person is going to be self-healing. The person, you want to make a foundation, a platform by which that person can process on their own.
Yes.
Because you can't fix me.
Right.
As much as I wish you could, right? And I can't fix you. Mm-hmm. And so we are there to enable a process and form a safe place and a foundation where that person can process
yes.
out loud with us.
Absolutely.
Because there is beauty in processing out loud.
Oh, and there's a necessity in processing. And sometimes when you're isolated and you don't have opportunity for conversation, a lot of that stuff gets bottled up and doesn't get dealt with. And so the healing that comes simply through having a conversation may be so much more powerful than you might realize. So to that point, you just said, you're not going to be there to fix everything. And that is one of the pledges to make as a listener. I will not give quick solutions. Mm-hmm. And I think for some people, this is going to be a challenge. We inherently have gifts and talents, and we want to use our skills, we want to use our wisdom. And, so someone has gotten into a car accident, the car's been declared totaled, and they're very concerned about having enough money to replace the car. And so you may think, oh, I just went through this, just bought a car. Let me give you all of the tips on how to buy the best car. But is the point really how to buy the best car, or is the point that the person's really struggling in their finances? This has become a great source of concern, and they just needed you to listen.
Yeah, and I resemble this remark because I am constantly trying to help fix things, and my motivation is good,
Right.
but there's only so much that excuse works, by
Yeah.
the way, because I am aware that sometimes people just want you to listen and not want you to fix, and you've seen the cute video about the nail in the woman's head, but
Yeah.
we're referring to a funny video that makes this point really, really well. But sometimes people just want you to listen. They
Mm-hmm.
don't want you to fix. And sometimes if you fix it for them, that makes them feel incapable.
Mm.
You know, I'm really trying to process this myself. I'd really like to come up with my own. I'd like to have some semblance of self-reliance here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to fix it. I want to work through the solution with you.
Yeah.
I'm hoping in talking with you, like the show House, if I talk to some other people, that I'm going to come up with the solution on my own. So don't tell me the solution. I want to try to figure this out. Can you help me figure it out?
Mm-hmm.
And yet people like me will say, well, I got the answer. Why do you want to do all that? You know, just do this, right? And that's not what they want. And the other part of that is diagnose before you prescribe. This comes back to, I know exactly how you feel. No, you don't. And it's very difficult to do a perfect diagnosis.
Sure.
So as much as you think you know what I've just gone through and you've got a fix, you don't know everything.
Right.
And if you just come at me with, oh well, here's my glasses. They work for you. They'll work for they work for me. They'll work for you. That doesn't help me.
Right.
You don't know everything I'm going through, and you don't know what my options or what my proclivities are. What I'd like to do. You don't know what my values are. You don't know what my preferences are. So in my cancer, I had the options of radiation, oncology, surgery, cyberknife, all kinds of different things. And, the last thing I wanted was for someone to say, this is exactly what you should do. Especially if they haven't listened to my whole story and
Right.
understand, because that's a very big decision, and some of them have lifelong consequences.
Oh, yeah.
That's not to be taken lightly. And one of my frustrations in this, as we've talked before, is my oncologist said you've got to do chemo, and my surgeon said you have to do surgery, my radiologist said you have to do radiation, and they said it with such conviction.
Yeah.
Like, this is your only answer. And it's like, well, wait a minute, there are other answers.
Yeah.
So how do you know? So these are the kind of things that a quick fix, it says quick fix here. I'm not sure I want you to offer me a fix. Now, if you say, hey, I've got some ideas all the way to what might be solutions, do you want to hear them?
The follow-up question's key. Do you want to hear them?
Do you want to hear them?
Yeah.
No, not yet.
Well, and
Can we process a little bit?
Yeah.
Now, these are conversations that you and I are having, neither one of us having been through a trauma today.
Yeah.
Yet,
Yeah.
right? So understand that too. I mean, in the heat of the battle, so to speak, you may not be able to think clearly enough to have this conversation back and forth with this kind of language.
Yeah.
And so the person may not even realize that they're processing or not want the answer yet.
Yeah.
And that's the cool part of discerning with somebody is to help them figure that out.
Yeah. I think of two stories immediately. One, personal to me, one kind of common in the illustration cycle of describing, processes. But one of our biggest source of conflict in my marriage is always around cooking.
Wow, you guys are great cooks. I
Yes.
love coming to your house for dinner.
Well, this is why it's almost comical when you're not in the heat of it. So, there'll be times, and something happened recently, I was trying to make falafels. So I had all the ingredients in the food processor and it wasn't blending. And Bob knew what the problem was and he wanted to come over and fix it. And I didn't want him to fix it because I wanted to figure it out. And I got
Myself.
so mad.
Exactly.
It was one of those
It's a great
moments.
example.
Yeah. If the question would have been asked, do you want me to show you how? I think I would have been in my frustration say, no, I really do want to figure this out because this is going to happen again
Yeah.
in the future.
That's
and
right.
I want to learn. And then the more commonplace story is really about the butterfly. The story of a kid seeing a butterfly kind of struggling to get out of a cocoon and thinking, oh, I'm going to help, and tears the cocoon open, rendering the butterfly incapable of flying from that point forward because it is in the struggle that, the circulation goes into the wings and dries off the fluid and stimulates the little hair follicles or whatever and allows it to fly. And so, I share both of those things because I think so often we love people and we want to proactively help fix their problems, but it's the fixing that may not be the most beneficial. And sometimes it is in the struggle or in the processing that we need to work things out to receive the healing.
And I have to admit and be a little vulnerable here. Sometimes it makes me feel good to fix other people's problems.
Sure.
Not in a good way, in a bad way, like I know everything and I'm going to help you here.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for your honesty.
I'm just saying, and so, and I'm better at that now, which is why I can be a little vulnerable about it, and I think the times I do it are pretty rare now out of that motivation, but that's a thing, and so that's something that we have to watch ourselves, know yourself to lead yourself. Is that am I trying to come in here and be the hero? Am I trying to come in here and be the person who can fix anything? And so, that's a curious question to ask about yourself.
Yeah.
But regardless, the question of I will not provide a quick fix or a quick answer for you, or just recommend a bunch of stuff, is a good one, because we should first ask the curious question of, where are you in the process in this? Are you looking for suggestions? Are you trying to see all your options? Are you trying to make a determination tomorrow, next week, next month? And if someone has the wherewithal to speak honestly, they may say something like, I've got about 4 weeks to figure this out. And I'd really like to understand all of my options with as open a mind as I can muster before I start figuring out what to do, because this is a really important thing. And I want to try to do it myself. I'm happy to listen to certain people that I like. Now, this is really hard for someone to actually process and say, but, and you may not be one of them, right? I mean, so even with all your good motivations. And so this is the point, is the person may not even be able to articulate what their own thought processes are,
Right.
which is another reason why not to offer a quick fix.
Yeah. I'm proud of myself in that I knew pretty quickly that I had to establish some boundaries from people offering me solutions, because I was overwhelmed emotionally. I could not handle people like just throwing resources at me, buying me books, having me listen to their favorite podcast of some healer that whatever. I knew I had to establish some boundaries. And so very quickly I was able to vocalize, I'm not ready to hear that now. And I felt good about saying that. And so, but it does take some courage to say that, especially if you are a people pleaser, which I am. I know that you struggle in that category as well. When you have people that you love, or people well-meaning that want to offer you solutions, for you to stop them and say, thank you, I'm not ready to receive that right now. That's a toughie.
Yeah. And by the way, even if you say that, if you've got the wherewithal, but this cannot be expected, to say, I may want to hear that in the future, just not now.
Yeah.
I'm processing, and it's just not part of my process to take in a bunch of different solutions right now, because everybody has one. And if I listen to everybody, there might be 100, and yours might be the one. But right now, I'm not in a position to be able to hear that, to listen to it, to discern if that's the right one, nor do I want the right solution today. Right now, I'm in my grieving process. I'm going through my denial. I'm going through my anger. I'm going through my acceptance. And you know what? I'm just not ready to receive that yet. And again, we're not going to be able to articulate that, which is why it's so important for us as the listener, as the person who's trying to help, to understand that they're probably going through a process that's different than yours, right? My daughter reminded me of the Platinum Rule this weekend in Las Vegas. We had some really good, deep conversations together with 4 people who don't necessarily get to be together, just the 4 of us. And it's my grandson, who is turning 21, and my daughter from North Carolina, and my wife and myself. And we got into some really cool conversations. And she was talking to Randall about something and said, now remember the Platinum Rule, because the Golden Rule is treat others as you would like to be treated. The Platinum Rule is treat others as they would like to be treated.
Oh, I've never heard that.
Now, think about that. That implies that you have taken the time to understand the other person, to know how they would like to be treated. And that's a big deal. I mean, if we can take the time to know that in this situation, that they, I mean, we've talked about love languages in the past. We've talked about different ways that people are on a Myers-Briggs or on a disc, on many of the different things. Well, this person needs this. Okay, they're the receiver. I'm the transmitter. I may not have the right tool for something that they need to receive right now. Or I may need to perceive what they need and be able to do it. And it is in my quiver of arrows or my tool belt. I have that capability. I have 3 options here. I know that they respond best to this one.
Loosely, this reminds me of a definition I heard about the word hospitality that just was so beautiful to me. And I heard it explained that hospitality in its truest form is, I thought about you before you got here. Meaning, you know, if you're having a house guest or you're welcoming somebody into your company for a tour and you want to be hospitable, you are thinking about them before they arrive. Do they have food allergies? Do they have an aversion to, you know, pets? Do they have, you know, certain things that environmental conditions they can't be around? Do they have a favorite snack? You know, I know these sound like silly little things, but I really do think it goes such a long and a beautiful way towards establishing just deep connection and appreciation and allowing someone to feel valued and to feel heard. And so if the question that you're asking in the back of your mind is, you know, how do I treat you the way that you want to be treated? You can't put yourself in their shoes because, as we've said, even in the last episode, we can't know exactly what someone's going through. But we can do our best to guess what might be kind of soothing words or encouraging conversation without trying to fix. And it is a fine line. I recognize it's a fine line. But our intentions, you know, if our intentions are to meet that person where they're at and to meet the need as fully as you are capable of doing, I think you're going to find that is most of the time is going to be a winning response.
I love that definition of hospitality, and it goes with the platinum rule, and that is, you know, being able, because we do sometimes know someone well enough, especially in these situations, which is why we're there, that we have seen in the past how they respond to different things, and we have some data. It might be a little bit different this time, but you know, they may generally. There are some people that I would go up and give a hug in this situation, and there's others that I absolutely would not.
Sure.
I mean, just little things like that are a big deal. If you know somebody's not a hugger, don't go intentionally hug them, even if you think the situation warrants it or if that's what you'd want.
Right.
And so that's the key.
Yeah. So the last of the kind of intentions for a listener that they state through the Trauma Healing Institute, through this little screenshot that I had, is I will listen again when you want to share more.
Boy, offering the person the ability to take a break. Look, if I say I can't do any more today, but I know that the next time I call you, you'll come back. That allows me to take a break. It allows me not to be overwhelmed. It allows me to know that you're there for me.
Yeah.
It allows me to know that you're there for me, not just in this moment, but long term. And that can be easing or soothing in itself.
Yeah.
As you're going through a trauma, because I can tell you the different reactions in my personal experience when I've had a trauma, when I went through my cancer diagnosis. I mean, there were some people who couldn't deal with it because of their own mortality. And for no other reason, they just couldn't talk to me. There were others that could do a little bit, but it was uncomfortable. And there was others like, wow, okay, that sucks. Let's, you know, sit and process this together. When would you like to? I'm available whenever you want.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm available, whenever you want.
Yeah.
Because it's not, hey, I've got an hour between 2 and 3 today. I don't care if you're tired and need a nap or a rest or, you know, recovering from your latest medication. That's my time. No, call me.
Yeah.
You know, I'll do my best to be available, be able to come right over. That even if you don't use it, is comforting.
Yes, it is. I had a comment on a social post that I made recently using that screenshot that I'm referring to from the Trauma Healing Institute, and I had written a little paragraph about why I was posting that, some reactions that I had to comments that people were making, and one of the comments very simply said, "Happy to listen." And it's someone that I have not engaged with in years, but I felt like it was absolutely sincere. And yes, posturing yourself in a space where you make the person who has gone through a painful situation feel like they can call on you if needed, that is a beautiful gift.
It is a beautiful gift. Be a resource when needed, provide something when needed, but your presence is your most valuable gift.
Yeah.
Time is our only limited resource, and if you've got the time to give, and that might be a really good way to preface this whole conversation when you're with somebody. And I think it is always important in any given situation to set the expectation. I've got 5 minutes. I've got, especially if it is only 5 minutes, I've got an hour, or I've got as much time as you need.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important thing to set up front. And ironically, how many times has it happened that you say, I've only got 30 minutes, and at minute 27, something happens and you really want to continue the conversation, one or the other. And that's when that's another really good time to say, I'm available. I'll be back, right?
Yeah.
Let's pick up this conversation later. I'm not abandoning you. I have other responsibilities, whatever it is. But clear expectation setting on both sides is the key. And that gets back to just communication. How often are we watching a movie or a TV show and we're just say, just tell her.
Yeah.
Tell her the situation,
Yeah.
or tell him. I mean, it's legendary, right? And so the more you communicate, the better. The more you communicate, as what we would say, in questions rather than judgments or statements, the better. And arming yourself with good questions to be able to ask in giving situations just allows you to be more natural and practice that muscle of curiosity more often.
So many things I could say in response. I think I'll just one parting comment is I think that time expectation is necessary on both sides. So the person who's gone through trauma, there may be physical things, there may be emotional things, but to as best as you can communicate your limitations. Like, I'm happy to talk to you, but I only think I can do it for 10 minutes today. For the recipient of that information to not have judgment, because again, you don't know what's going on in the mind, will, and emotion of that person. And just for us to cultivate as much as possible that honest, sincere dialogue back and forth with that caveat of, let's do this again another time when time and capacity allows. I value our relationship, I value our friendship, and I will be here for you.
And those words are so comforting, especially when you give someone the freedom to choose when and where and how long that interaction takes place.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, lots to think about, and I certainly hope this is some good things for you to consider, whether you yourself have walked through trauma or you're trying to have some dialogue with someone who has. Just great ways to approach that conversation in curiosity and not judgment. So we will see you next week.
Take care.